Hi, everyone. My name is Siamak, and this is my Geosynthetics podcast. Welcome to this episode of the podcast. And as you can see, I have a special guest in this episode, my good friend in South Africa, Johannesburg, today. It's morning time, I think, Edoardo, your time, and late afternoon, my time. So, welcome to the Geosynthetics podcast. And can you just maybe quickly introduce yourself? Obviously, Edoardo Zannoni, one of the pioneers of geosynthetics in South Africa as well. So if you start with a quick introduction, that would be great.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are. It's Upper State here in South Africa. Siamak, thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be joining in your podcast. Looking forward to having a chat with you. I'm Edoardo Zannoni. I'm the section manager for geotech for NIPISO Consulting based in South Africa. And I'm also the IGS vice president. So
Perfect.
thank you for
Perfect.
the invite.
No worries. So, Eduardo, let's just start with your career. Generally in engineering, where did you start, and how did you end up in geosynthetics?
Yeah, that's a good question. We always ask each other, how did you end up here? And it's actually and I'm sure you have quite a long list of how people end up in geosynthetics. So how I end up in geosynthetics, during my master studies. So I studied in Italy, in Rome. And when I started my MSc in postal engineering, I was looking at breaking waves over geotextile tubes. And that was 17 years ago. So geotextile tubes started to creep into the market, especially in Australia. You guys have some reefs built up of geotextile tubes. Italy was looking at breaking reefs, and we wanted to study, okay, what is the geometry of the tube made to change the breaking waves, and what was the dissipation of energy. So that is where I start with geotextile. Now, on my side, in terms of coastal engineering, I just care of the size of the shape. That's the only thing that you create. That was quite interesting because the professor kind of says, like, okay, what those things are. So I looked at the products, and then I ended up actually getting exposed to a bit of geosynthetics. And that is what brought me to geosynthetics. So I then moved to South Africa. I worked for a manufacturer for 13 years. And I was really intrigued of the geosynthetics. I set at the back of my mind during my master's study about geosynthetic. I looked at geosynthetic erosion control and reinforcement. And then I moved in South Africa to cover the geosynthetic side and the technical side. And funny enough, the story goes that I started the geosynthetic in South Africa 3 months before GeoAfrica. So I then got lucky enough as a youngster to attend the first GeoAfrica conference in Cape Town. And I met everybody. I must be honest, I'm not sure. I was a bit of a fish out of water or wet behind the ears. I kind of didn't have much knowledge of what was happening, but I always say to everybody, go out, attend conference. It's still remarkable. And I still go back to the GeoAfrica papers to actually read what I listened to, and I didn't follow thoroughly.
Yeah, yeah. No, very good. I think that's that probably brings us to the next question, because I was going to ask you about, like, you moved from Italy to Africa to start your career there. What do you think generally about geosynthetics in Africa? How popular they are, how known they are, how much information is out there? Engineers, how they interact with geosynthetics?
Yeah. So geosynthetic in Africa, I think it's the perfect fit. I've put it like that. It's still under development. If you look at how many IGS chapters are in Africa, you can count it on your hands. If you look at how many solution entails geosynthetic, it's still a few. But in the past 20 years, you actually see an exponential growth of geosynthetics. And that is not only in one sector. I've worked in Africa, from North Africa to South Africa, from Egypt to Mauritania. And What I see geosynthetic is that when someone understands the geosynthetic, someone comes with the background of geosynthetic and they propose a solution using geosynthetic, and I don't call it alternative. It's not an alternative. And all of a sudden you are able, and that I think is the strongest point of geosynthetic, especially in Africa, is that you can use local material.
Yeah.
Sometimes our clients, they sit with kilometers of mining haul roads, or you're sitting with water retaining structures that are in rural areas, and just to put a batching plant for concrete, you can't do that, or you don't have aggregates. So most of the solution entailed in geosynthetic is using natural material, or half-bold retaining wall with soils that it will scare even a road engineers. And we built 15, 17 meter high vertical reinforced soil structure just using what was available. Of course, a lot of geosynthetic went in to make sure that you manage the drainage component, the erosion control, the reinforcement side of it. But I think that's a first point of geosynthetics in Africa. And the second, I think, is even bigger. Is that if you look at geosynthetic, actually, you don't need to have a degree to install. You don't need to be specialized. Okay, maybe barrier. But to put a geotextile non-woven in a subsoil drain doesn't really need particular skill. And I'm always amazed to get to site and you got hundreds of people, because remember, Africa is labor intensive most of the time. And you get people laying down geotextiles, geogrids in roads, building retaining walls, and all of that is labor intensive. And if you look at the other alternative solution, you can't do it. So I think that is where geosynthetic will thrive in Africa. I think we're just starting to scratch. I've seen a lot of geosynthetic using roads, hundreds of kilometers of roads, waste management, coastal protection. South Africa, the coast of South Africa, there is a lot of what we call geobags, even part of Mozambique. So there is really, it's starting. And the interesting thing is that once the client get exposed to geosynthetics, then they keep on going back. They says, no, we want geosynthetics. Don't come with concrete. Don't. We don't want those things. We want geosynthetics. So actually, you turn them around.
That's great. That's very great to hear. And you're also very involved with mining in Africa. So I remember your paper in GeoANZ last year about geosynthetics in mining and the use in Africa. Do you want to tell us about geosynthetics more concentrated in mining application, please?
Yeah. So Siamak, mining is a market on its own. It's a sector that it's not the public sector, it's not the private sector, it's the mining sector. And I've seen you need to have an attitude to work for the mines. When you work for the mine, the phone at 6 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock at night, the plant keeps on running. We know it's almost Christmas time and mining doesn't have Christmas. So it's really a different industry. But the geosynthetic in mining, I like to say, is the is taking geosynthetics to almost to the limit, because if you think mining, it's huge quantities and huge risk, tight tolerance. Think about tailings dam. We design tailings dam. We design all roads. If you look at the process of the mining, everything needs to work, from the crusher all the way to the plant. If one of those fails, the mine shuts down. And I'm sure you can put on numbers of how many, if one day of a mine shuts down, and it's not hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's somewhere in the millions. So where geosynthetic fits is because you increase the reliability of your solution. As engineer, I want to reduce the risk and increase the reliability. So and when I use geosynthetics, I can use local material again, or even if I'm not so sure, as soon as I introduce geogrid in all roads, I use a barrier system under my tailings dam, I increase the reliability, which makes the solution less prone to risk. And mining is all about risk. So mines understand risk. They don't understand what is the leakage rate of a member, what is the shear resistance. So this is okay. What is the risk? What's the factor of safety? Because everything is linked to the risk appetite in the market. So geosynthetic is really it should be used everywhere in mining. And we use it in waste management facility, but we started to use it in water conservation. We started to use it very extensively in rehabilitation and closure. Now there is a lot of work that is starting to get done in rehabilitation and closure. And even if you don't want to use an erosion control product, you will end up, because you cannot have a topsoil sitting at 1 in 2. It's impossible. You need to have something. So surely geosynthetic in mining is where I know that the confidentiality, we can't talk about the project we do, but I've seen some project or some people have presented, and it's just amazing what geosynthetic brings into mining. So it's pity that we can't really talk much about it.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. And then Edoardo, the other thing I was going to ask you, which is, more related to you, coming from Italy to South Africa, and also a couple of years ago, you changed your company from a manufacturer to a consultant. So the two completely different worlds, I would say. That was a surprise to me, and I'm really happy that to see you working very successfully as a consultant. How did you find that, like the transition or the challenge, and what do you think helped you from your knowledge in geosynthetics manufacturing when you started working as a consultant? And the second question I might ask you now as well, and you might answer those two in combination, is generally about design, because what you do as a consultant is generally about design. And what do you think, or how do you think the incorporation of geosynthetics in the design should really happen?
Yeah, so I heard this question all the time. It's actually that some people don't know about it. I moved from manufacturer to consult 3 years ago because of COVID. We haven't seen each other until recently. The difference is not really the technical abilities. There are great manufacturers that have great engineering capabilities. So nothing that's to take out to these manufacturers that have what they call engineering unit, technical department and everything. So I was lucky enough that the technical transition wasn't a big of a shock. What I had to adjust is that as a manufacturer, you have a set of products which you manufacture, and you are the expert on it. You know every single thing. And I used to know every reduction factor, every technical aspect. When you move to consulting, you don't have that luxury of that level of detail. You run in projects. Most of the time in project management, that's usually what I end up doing. You barely do design, because you have a team of engineers, junior engineer, senior engineer, looking after the project. So you're actually sitting on the project management SaaS program, liability, clients relationship, and all of that. And that is what is missing from the manufacturer. So I think that is what was the big difference from manufacturer to consultant. It's just the scope of the project increased. And all of a sudden, I sit on the other side of the table, we design roads, and there is lots of retaining wall. I used to design retaining walls quite often, and to be honest, we didn't even design them. We just took a typical section, and we says, well, we're gonna put that in, because if you're looking at the scope, it's really minor compared to the entire development of the project. Which kind of brings me to your second question: how you incorporate geosynthetic in design? I think our industry, the geosynthetic industry, is you need the manufacturer, you need the consultant, and you need the installers. And because as an engineer, I don't have that detailed know-how of geosynthetics. So I rely on the manufacturer to help me to find, okay, which one is the right one, because I don't have the finesse or the detail, or even sometimes the time to look into the detail. So that is where the manufacturer comes in. And the contractor on the other side is the one that has the ability to actually make the geosynthetic happen.
Yeah.
Few times, luckily happened to me a few times to see that the design actually cannot be built. I always say to my young engineers, like, no, it's a great design. How are you building it?
Yeah.
And then you see eyes open. It's like, what do you mean I've designed? It's like, yeah, but build it for me. Just talk me through. And can't be built. I've seen
right.
anchor trench under a liner. I've seen geogrid blaze over rockfall. All sorts of things that, you know, when you start getting gray hair or no hair like me, you ask those questions. So I think it's what I'm really kind of excited about it is that the geosynthetic is, if you think about it, is very detailed. You know, when we talk about geosynthetic, we really go into details. And that is where sometimes as an industry, that's what I'm trying to say, to push across our department or to the manufacturer. Just, you know, keep the detail, but also sometimes keep it general.
Yeah.
Maybe it's for, if you're a manufacturer, you listen to it. And of course, there is a marketing agenda that you want your product in. But I've seen it sometimes that the manufacturers actually scares the engineers away, because they say, I know, but these and these and these and that. The engineers say, you know what? I'll rather stick to what I know, because that is just too complicated.
Yeah.
And which is not what we want
That's
to do.
right.
We want geosynthetic to be used everywhere.
That's right. That's right. Actually, on that point, Edoardo, I fully agree with you. I think, especially as an industry, you know, we sometimes, you know, go into the nitty-gritty details, and like, you know, the clients might be scared off, like, of the whole idea of like, okay, looks like if I don't know, or if I don't have the knowledge, I cannot really even trust, you know, which way I go or which product I choose, and then yeah, that's probably something that, you know, even we lose some clients as an industry, or some customers. Eduardo, the other question is something that I ask almost all of my guests in the previous 20 odd episodes that I've done for this podcast. So you've had a fantastic career in geosynthetics, and will no doubt, you know, continue successfully, you know, for years to come. But I just wanted to see what do you think was maybe one highlight for you in your whole entire career so far, and why was that the highlight for you?
Yeah, put it like that. I'm still young enough to, in my short career, compared to some of your other people that have joined the podcast. But what I can think of is the highlights is actually be able to be part of a niche community, which is the geosynthetic community. And some highlights is sitting down with engineers or with clients, and you're trying to solve a problem. And all of says, but why don't we do that? And it's just a perfect fit. I can mention a few projects. I'm sure the message comes across. That all of a sudden you get stuck in a project, you don't have the material, you don't have the skills, you don't have the challenging ground condition. And all of a sudden says, but we can use a geosynthetic to reinforce an embankment, a drainage composite, and all of a sudden it just makes sense. So in 5 minutes, you solve the problems, gets implemented, and everybody just walks away quite happy. So I think that is one of the highlights of my career. The other one is also to see these knowledge transfer. I'm really passionate about my young engineers, or young engineers in general. And we keep on trying to teach geosynthetic at undergrad or postgrad. But if you talk to professors, says they are already struggling to cover the geotechnical curriculum. And you know better than me what it means teaching geosynthetics. There is not enough time. So I really get passionate of when the young engineers get exposed to geosynthetic, they get afraid of it, they don't understand it, and all of a sudden they develop. And I can say a few years down the line, I got I know of some not so young anymore engineers that they use geosynthetics, and that's add up to the geosynthetic community. I think that's another highlight of my career. So
yeah, absolutely, and I think that's a very important point, Edoardo. We've seen it like here in Australia as well, that the geosynthetics are not part of formal education at universities. IGS has that idea of educate the educated, the program that the IGS runs all around the world, and we've had many successful examples of it, but still I think there's a lot of work to be done. But yeah, I fully agree with your comment about working with young engineers and how you want to sort of encourage them and sort of teach them some of the basics, and then that's a good feeling as well.
Yeah, and like I say, I got exposed to GeoAfrica, the first GeoAfrica, and I think I want to say one of the few. I've done all the GeoAfrica, luckily. But as a young engineer sitting in Cape Town, not understanding what was going on, and then 15 years later, I still don't understand most of what's going on, but at least I do have an appreciation. And that young engineers, we need to bring them into the conference, webinars. There are hundreds of webinars on LinkedIn. And that is what young engineers need, just exposure. There is not enough time in the undergrads and postgrad courses for geosynthetic. And also because, let's be honest, they're not so easy, or maybe that's another thing of the industry should do, just sometimes make it easy. I'll tell you a short one. I was in a conference and one of the clients stood up and says, if we don't use geosynthetic in each and our project, then we're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And he said, and he's amazing. He was the client.
Yeah.
So he says, it's so obvious.
Yeah.
Just use them. So
That's
that is where I go back, that sometimes we just need to just use it.
Yeah.
It will work.
Exactly.
Of course.
Exactly.
With few exceptions.
Exactly. Yeah, perfect. No, that's very good, Edoardo. That was a very good chat. Yeah, I'm really happy that we finally made this happen, because we talked about it from a long time ago. And yeah, thanks for your time and for sharing your knowledge and information and opinions about geosynthetics in my podcast. Thanks to the listeners or people who are watching this the video for following us, and we will see you in our next episode. Thank you.
Thank you, Siamak. Keep well.
Bye.
Bye-bye.